All right, so for today's agenda, we're going to go through a few cool things. So we're very happy to finally be able to demonstrate and release the new UI that we've been working on for about the last year and a bit. So David's going to walk us through a demonstration of the new UI as it currently sits completed, and so we're looking forward to everybody being able to use that. There are also a few new pages that we want to kind of highlight that perhaps we haven't demonstrated in a webinar. We've made announcements, but we just want to make sure that everybody's aware that these things are out there. So Dave's going to walk you through that, as well as inter-project dependencies are finally here. I know that some users have been waiting a very long time for them to arrive. And so Patrick's going to give us a demonstration on that and show us how we can use that and maybe some use cases. And then I'm going to discuss the new Professional Services Edition, which is a completely brand new version of Easy Projects that we've created. And as part of that discussion, I'll be reviewing the first two new features for that version, which are rate cards and the professional services dashboards, BI dashboards that we've created specifically for that version. So I'll be walking you through that and showing you how to use those things. And hopefully there's some value for everybody there. If at any point in time you feel like maybe you get to near the end of the webinar and rate cards aren't applicable for you because you don't bill, feel free to drop off. If it's not something that isn't absolutely something that you would use an EP, that's going to be the way that we're attacking stuff today. All right. So with that said, I'm going to flip it over to David and actually have him take over and get us kicked off with a demonstration of the new UI.
All right, thanks very much, Steve. Okay, so for those of you who've been with Easy Projects for a short while, this is probably the user interface that you are most familiar with. We have the traditional bar across the top of the screen to access any menu items. You click the drop-down bar and you choose the menu item you want to pop into. Now, you might have noticed, again, over the last year, we have periodically been updating some pages in Easy Projects like portfolios and users, things like that. They were all done to pave the way for the new UI. So to access the new UI in your Easy Projects account, you're going to click your name in the upper right-hand corner, and you're going to switch to New User Experience. Ta-da! So the idea behind the new UI is obviously Easy Projects. We strive to make the product as intuitive, informative, and useful to teams as possible. And one thing we always like to mention is we appreciate getting user feedback, and we take them on board, and where possible, we like to use that feedback to improve our product. And one of the most vocal bits of feedback we had been getting was the UI. And at some point, we knew we would have to tackle it, and it was decided that this is going to be the year to do that. So for those who were used to Easy Projects rolling out periodic features and updates, there has been a bit of a drought while this month's this monumental item has been tackled. But hopefully you will appreciate the result of all the effort that has gone into this. So we understand as well that getting used to a new UI, a user interface, it's not something that's going to happen overnight, which is why we have been periodically updating pages as well as letting users switch back and forth between the new UI and the old UI. That being said, the old UI will be available for use until July 31st, 2020. At that date, all users will then be required to use the new UI. So there is plenty of time to get used to it. Let us know any questions, concerns, feedback that you have about the new UI, and we will definitely take that on board. So the idea behind the new UI is moving away from the traditional bar across the top where you have to click multiple times to get to somewhere in the tool. We've now moved to this single, we always like to say one click away. Where possible, we want to have the desired location one click away from the screen that you're on. So previously, to get to My Assignments, you had to click Projects and Tasks and then click the My Assignments button. Well, now you just click My Assignments on the left-hand side, and it opens straight up for you, and then you can go back to your activity center. One of the cool features I like about this is the ability to collapse down the sidebar. So you'll notice each item in the sidebar has its own unique icon next to it. The more you get familiar with the layout, you'll be able to collapse down and then use the icon to navigate where you want to go in the sidebar. Okay. One other cool feature about this is the saved views. So in Easy Projects, for those again who are pretty familiar with the platform, you have the ability to customize your activity center layout by turning on and off various columns, using different filters to come up with a layout that shows you exactly what you want to see. And previously, once you came up with that layout, you'd click Save As, and then to access that layout, you click the drop down here and choose the name of the view you wanted to see. Well, not anymore. With the new UI, all your saved views are listed on the left-hand side here. And again, the advantage of that is no matter what page I'm on in the new UI, I'm one click away from getting back to my saved views. You'll notice as well with the saved views, each different view type has a different icon. These icons represent the different layouts in your activity center. So for example, the table view will be like this icon here. Kanban board is like this icon here. Gantt, so if you have the Gantt view turned on, and then finally the calendar view. So therefore, I can take a look at my activities that are late, like so. I can see my layout like this. I can then easily click to my Gantt layout to see, well, what's on my to-do list. And I have my layout saved exactly the way I want to work. So this shows me what do I need to do today. I need to prepare for the webinar. I can mark that now as closed, hopefully. And I can take a look at the Gantt view. Again, save view, showing me exactly what I want to see. And then finally, we also have the calendar view. For those of you who are not too familiar with it, it gives you the ability to see a calendar version of your data. But not only that, you can actually customize the calendar to color different activities depending on maybe a category that's assigned to the activity, the person who's assigned, the portfolio that those activities are assigned to. Okay, so like Steve mentioned, there are some other pages that have been recently introduced to the new into Easy Projects. Number one is the approval requests. So previously in the old UI, in order to see any approval requests, if you recall, you did have the button at the top that told you, indicated when your approval had been requested essentially, and then you have to go into the activity to see that. Well, with the approval request section here, if someone requests your approval or there's approval requests outstanding, it's all in one location for you. So if I click into approval requests, I can see, for example, here's approval requests that I have sent out to Steve. And this one has been sent to multiple people, Steve and Patrick. And at a glance, I can tell by looking at this that Steve has approved it because of the green icon here. Patrick hasn't yet looked at my approval request, or at least hasn't reacted to it. And then here's one that my approval has been requested. So you can see my avatar icon here, and I haven't yet looked at this. So I can go ahead, click in here, and then reject it. Sorry, Steve. And then any approval history can be seen in here. So rather than having to go back into an activity to find any approvals or trying to recall exactly who requested what or who approved what, the approval request history tab allows you to easily see everything in one place. Secondly, we've also recently updated the time logs history page. So to access that, you'll click time logs, and then you'll have time logs history up here. So the layout is a lot like the newer pages we've been adding to Easy Projects. One thing you can do in here is you can control exactly what columns you want to see. So because you can now add custom fields to time entries, you have the ability to see those custom fields from in here. Or if you don't want to, you can simply click the plus icon here and uncheck exactly what fields aren't applicable and change your layout to look like this. Now, when it comes to filtering data, all the UI layout has been updated to have the filter icon up in the upper right-hand corner here. So therefore, you can show or hide filters to give yourself maximum room on the screen. So if I want to see my filters, I can click this icon, and all the traditional filters that you're used to seeing on the time logs history page are still in here. So you can choose exactly what range you want to filter your data by, click apply, and then hide your filter. And there's the data, like so. Okay, so I don't want to take up too much more time. So I think it might be time to pass over to Patrick to maybe have a quick talk about inter-project dependencies. If you have any questions about any of the pages that we have gone through today, please feel free to reach out to success@easyprojects.net. And thank you very much.
Thanks, David. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
You're a bit faint there, Patrick. Can you move your mic?
Okay, is this better?
A lot better. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Does it look good? All right. Dependencies are a pretty commonly used feature inside of Easy Project. And in fact, I would dare to say that many customers actually rely on dependencies in order to work effectively. So inter-project dependencies are a natural extension of that, where projects, where you have projects that don't necessarily work in silos or in a vacuum, but instead are a part of a larger effort on behalf of multiple teams. Right. So this is the case with many large-scale firms or large-scale organizations where you have independent teams working together towards in like a campaign fashion, or if you have a larger portfolio size project that's been broken down into smaller components. So in this case, I'm going to work with an example of a marketing team who is preparing for a trade show, but has multiple projects for photo shoots, brochures, and trade shows that have related deliverables, right? So first off, we'll start small and simple with a regular dependency within a single project. So you have these 3 tasks. They all happen one after the other. So I'm not going to like list the name of the task. I'm not going to read it out. I'm just going to connect those dependencies because these all naturally flow from one to the other, right? So these 3 tasks are now connected via the traditional method. And then with this one, with the edited photos, the brochure needs those photos in order to do the layout. And therefore the layout cannot start until the photos have been received. So we need to establish a dependency between this task and the layout task. So what we're going to do now is connect it using the same method we used to connect these activities, where you just hold down the mouse button and the chain icon, and then connect it to the layout task. Same way we do it with everything else. And so now these 2 are dependent. And if anything here changes, there's a delay in the shoot day, then the layout task is impacted as well, right? Of course, I do also have to establish a dependency between the layout and the printer, because now you can't have the layout. Well, maybe I should do this too, since you need both the copy and the layout in order to send it to the printer, right? And then last but not least, we have this date, which is the trade show day. Right? So this trade show day is very important because it is basically locked in. So the marketing team, as much as they would like to, cannot move the trade show date. They have to work within the schedule they're given. And so this kind of dependency internally is known as a start to finish dependency, where this has to start before this one can finish. So basically it's working its way backwards. So in order to work your way backwards from the deadline, you can click on your chain icon and move your way backwards from here. However, I'm not gonna pull the trigger on that. I'm just gonna let that go for a second, because I wanna show you how you do it the hard way, where if you want to use the traditional dependency control is this column, this button. Some of the old school users in Easy Projects may be familiar with this one, because this is how we used to do dependencies before the Gantt chart arrived. So in this case, you would open up the dependency profile or dependency window. You would select activity or type of keyword, and usually If you're limited to just the same project, this is all you're going to see. But since we're now able to connect to different projects, you'll see the project name displayed up here. If you want to connect to a different project using this interface, you would have to, I don't know, it's a little small. I hope you can see that. Click on this arrow facing left. So now you see a list of the projects on the system. So now that we have a list of projects on the system, we're going to connect to new product brochure. Okay, and now we see all of the tasks inside of new product brochure. So now I'm going to connect to send to printer 8551. So you confirm that that's the right activity number. And let's change the dependency type from finish to start to finish, because that's the one that's moving backwards. So when I press save, you'll see a line jump out and connect these two tasks together. Okay, that didn't work out the way I was expecting it to. So let's do this again. So in the interest of time, let's just do it backwards. So now we've got this dependency moving its way backwards to send to the printer. So that's basically how it is that's basically how you would connect multiple projects together using dependencies. Yeah, so that's it for this demonstration. I'm going to kick it off to Steve so that he can show the rate cards.
Thanks, Patrick. So we're actually going to kick it back to David for a second, so that he can quickly just address one of the questions that that came up with respect to customizing your saved views list. So I think there's some value in showing that for everybody.
Absolutely. I had it on a note and I completely missed it, so my apologies. So yeah, I'm sure when quite a few of you look at your save views list, your list is probably a lot longer than mine is. Reason for that is you probably have all the default views turned on, and we haven't obviously shown you how you can hide them. So if we go back to the icon up here, select our manage saved views, when you click edit, and this is something that we didn't have previously, was recently updated, is the ability to hide the save view. So if you're someone who has created maybe save views for your teams, but you're not necessarily the one who's using them, you just have to create them and then share them with your team, you have the ability to then hide that view. So if I look at my activities at risk, for example, maybe that's something that I don't really need to use. So therefore, I'm just going to hide, click hide, and then press apply. My save views list is now cleared so that only the views that actually I care about are there. Okay, so again, once more, click the icon up here, press edit when you see the save views list. And by hiding it, you're not actually getting rid of it. You're just removing it from the view save views list on the left-hand side here. And if maybe you've hidden something and then you realize, actually, I do want to see activities that are on hold, you can press show and apply, and then that save view will appear for you. So that's just an additional benefit to using the sidebar to manage your save views. You can hide what you don't want to see and just have your own go-to views listed on the left-hand side here. And one other very quick point outside of that is, again, in the old UI, to access your user settings, you had to click your name in the upper right-hand corner. Mightn't be as obvious in this version, but you'll just click where it has your avatar or your company logo. You can kind of see when I hover in that area, it grays up this area. Click there, and you can access my settings, company settings. If you're an admin user, you can see all the various menu items listed here. My settings is just your own kind of profile information. And then finally, if, okay, you're using the new UI, but maybe you want to go back to the classic UI, and you can switch back to classic user experience if you need to. Okay. All right, Steve, over to you.
Thanks, Dave. Good stuff. A couple points, guys, just on the UI experience. One, we've been using it in the background as a beta version for a long time, a medium long time. I'm so used to it. It's so much better on a daily basis. Every time I somehow get back to the old UI, I immediately want to change it back to the new one. So I would say give it a shot. Give it a chance, and I think you're really going to enjoy it, especially if you customize it the way that Dave just showed you and put your views and hide, curtail your view list down to exactly what you want. If you're not using save views, spend a few minutes and play around with it, use the filters, use the the adjustable columns and whatnot. I can't imagine using easy projects without save views, so give that a shot. All right, so at this point, we're going to move on to something that's super exciting for us to present. So I'm actually going to just share a PowerPoint slide as I talk through this. So we're launching a new edition of Easy Projects called the Professional Services Edition that is geared towards service automation companies. And so much of Easy Projects is already formulated and useful for organizations that deliver some sort of service for a fee. And so it made sense for us to continue to enhance that value proposition, differentiate it a little bit, and come up with a professional services edition product. We will continue to have our Easy Projects Classic, if you want to call it that, as a subset of the professional services edition. But you'll see some new features that will come into all of Easy Projects, and then you'll see some other features that are only for the professional services edition going forward, as we differentiate those two types of products and specialize a little bit on making sure that that subset of customers that are in that business area are getting some benefit. And so as the very first two features that we're introducing as part of the professional services edition, I'm going to walk you through rate cards and the professional services dashboards for this edition that were created using our Power BI dashboards. So let's flip over to Easy Projects. Here we go. All right, so what's a rate card? We'll start there. Start at the beginning. So rate cards are basically a new method for calculating the project billing in Easy Projects. And it's similar to the resource hourly rate that we already have, in that you're still going to be using resources and their hourly rates to calculate your billing, but the main difference is the way that the rates are sourced or used. For resource hourly rate, we typically, and I'll give you a quick hop over to the users, and we'll find David. And for resource hourly rate, you can see that Dave's billing rate is $100 per hour and his internal rate is 50. So whenever the project settings are set to resource hourly rate and Dave logs time, from a billing perspective, it's going to use that $100 per hour to calculate the billing for him on that project. So pretty straightforward. With rate cards, however, you gain some additional flexibility in that you can override the user's default rate off their profile on a given project or on a given rate card. And you can do so for as many assignees or people on the project as you would like. And so it gives you the ability to, because previously we did have, I'll jump in here. So we do have a previous setting called project hourly rate, where you could override the user's profile setting as well for the billing rate and say, hey, I want everybody on this project to be billed out at $75 an hour. The problem with that, obviously, is that if I've got multiple users on the same project and they have different rates that I want to use, so if I want Patrick to have a rate of 125 and Dave to have a rate of 100 or 200 or whatever, I wasn't previously able to do that. So with a rate card, however, you can get as granular as you like when it comes down to changing those rates. A quick point around accessing rate cards. Permissions is always a thing, so it's entirely possible that you will go to try and use parts of the rate cards and not be able to access them. So I just wanted to cover that. To be able to, and actually I'll use this as an opportunity to show you how to get into rate cards, the rate card section. So click on your user profile into the company settings like Dave showed before, and then you'll notice there's a new setting called rate cards right here. And so in order for you to be able to access this part of Easy Projects, you need to have the billing access checkbox turned on your role. In order to be able to manage rate cards, you need to be able to have the manage system settings, because if you don't have that turned on, you wouldn't see this. So you need both of those turned on to get here. And then finally, if you do have those turned on, in order to change or edit a rate card on a given project, you need to be able to edit that project as well. So it's kind of like a three-tiered system. So if you have any questions about this after the webinar, just reach out to us and we can walk you through. Okay, so how do we get to rate cards? We just demonstrated that. You can see that we've got 4 rate cards that have previously been created here. You'll notice that we've got a little indicator here that some are not in use and some are in use. That just means that this particular rate card is in use on a project, while this one is not. It's not attached to any given project. Okay. So how do we create a rate card? Pretty straightforward. As with most things in Easy Projects, you click on the green plus button. All right, we'll start off by giving our rate card a name. We will be very literal and pedantic. Okay, so it's got a name. Next up, we're going to choose the currency for our rate card. So this is where we will determine what the currency for the project using this rate card will be set at. And so we'll leave it at US dollar or as dollar for the time being. Next up, we're going to choose an effective date. And so for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm actually going to put it back to January 1st, 2020. And now comes how at the crux of the rate card. So the rate card is actually governed by roles. So by that, I mean that for, we'll say a project manager. Okay, so for a project manager, which I know that David is on his default role, this is where I can say all project managers on this rate card, I want their rate to be 150 instead of whatever is on their user profile. And then for a designer, I might say 75, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you redefine based on the roles what the rate should be for those users. We also have a default rate so that if there are assignees on the project that aren't captured in these roles and aren't overridden by these roles, then we can say, okay, then I want to place a default rate of $50. Okay, so we've kind of captured what the override should be for each of these roles, okay? Okay, next we will save the rate card. And we're going to note that there it is, it's in our list, it is not in use. So next what we'll do is we're going to show you how to use a rate card on a project. Dave just put his hand up. He was just asking me to do something that I'm going to come back to, so we'll go with the flow. All right, so you can see that I've got a demo project here. It's a custom software project example. In order to assign a rate card to a project, you go into, shockingly, you'll go into the project billing settings, click on the $, and in the drop down for the project billing is based on, select rate card. Okay, that'll be a new entry in that list. From there, you will select the rate card that you would like to use. And so for this example, I actually built one out already and I called it software project. And so at this point in time, if you want to open up the rate card, you can do so from the screen. And you'll open up the rate card here and it should look familiar to the rate card that we just built out before. In this case, I've added some roles that I want to override. And you can see that I've given them some very specific rates so that I can tell easily for the purposes of demonstration that we're using this $99 as opposed to maybe 100 or some other rate that would be on the user profile. I've also got a default rate on here and I've got the effective date for this rate card. All right, so pretty straightforward. You can see that I'll save this and then I'm going to come back out. All right, and so on this project, I've set it up so that I've got David as, David is assigned to an activity and Patrick is assigned to an activity. Both of their typical roles are project managers on a given project. For this project, however, I don't want them managing the project, I want them doing specific other work. And so I've assigned them different roles. So in this case, I've made David a developer and I've made Patrick a web developer. And to do so, you just click on the edit screen here. Excuse me. Actually, sorry, you click on the little gear sign beside the users, and then you can choose the role that you want to change them to on a per project basis. All right, so we've got these guys assigned their different roles, and we've also established a rate card whereby, based on those roles, any time logged on the project by these guys will be overridden with those rates. So you can see that I've named this cleverly, that David as developer, Patrick as web dev, and you can see that they are assigned to both of these tasks. So here's where the proof is in the pudding. So you can see that David has logged 10 actual hours on this task. Patrick has logged 10.004. I don't know why that is on this task. And if you recall, I think David's profile rate was $100 an hour, but you can see that it's actually using the 99.99 that I have on my rate card to calculate the billing on the project, which is excellent. Same thing for Patrick. Patrick has a billing rate of $100, I believe, somewhere in that range. But you can see that because he's been assigned the role of web developer, that he will actually be using a rate of $49.95, which would have been a lot more obvious if that 0.04 wasn't added there. I don't know how that happened. But you can see that the project is in fact using the rates off the rate card as you would expect. So if we were to add additional people onto this project, additional signees and project members who did fit into the roles that we built out in the rate card, then you would see that the billing is in fact generated from that information. In fact, if we jump into the old financial module, you can see that the entire financial module is hooked into the rate card, and the project billing is a summary of what we saw in the activity center. So the entire Easy Projects platform has been hooked into the rate card so that your project billing is generated by it. Super cool, super flexible, and allows you to basically bill exactly what you want to on a given project. We're very, very excited about this because it allows us a lot of flexibility in terms of how we build out our billing. The next thing that I wanted to quickly cover is what David was highlighting, is the idea of version control. So on a given rate card, it's entirely possible during a project's lifecycle that the rates will change. Perhaps there's an annual renegotiation of rates, something to that effect. So what you can do is you can actually click on the plus side and right here, and you'll notice that there's a new version that's been created with today's date. And you'll notice that the previous rate card, or the previous rates and rate, now has a moniker of past. So this is the rate card for before today. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make a change. I'm actually going to remove project manager, and I'm going to save it. Go back into it. So there are 3 different categories or chronological categorizations of a rate card. So there's past, so rates before this date. And I'll add another one. So we'll say after March 31st. So we had current, upcoming, and we had past before. So basically, we'll say, make that 100. So you can have rate cards that apply to the past that were before today. You can have a rate card that applies to the current time period up until a certain point. And then you can even create rate cards for the future. So let's say that you have a contract change on January 1st, 2021. You can create a rate card in advance to capture that and change the rates for that time period. So you've got complete versioning as you build out your rate card. Click Save, and your rate card will be saved. The last point that I wanted to make when it comes to rate cards is that they are, you can use the same rate card for multiple projects, which is cool. So if you have categories of projects or project templates, or different types of projects that would use the same billing rates, you can use the same rate card for the same projects. If you have a good template of a rate card, but you want to make some switches to it, but you don't want to actually get rid of it, or you don't want to save over it, you can duplicate it. So you just click the 3 dots in the top, and then click duplicate. It'll create a copy of it, change the name, make some changes, and then save it. And then when you go back into your rate card list, your rate card screen, you'll see that you've got that copy there. Finally, if you would like to delete a rate card, you can do so by clicking on the delete. So three ellipses and then click on delete. As with everything in EP, well, that's not what I expected because it's been in use. Let's jump back to the screen here. We'll choose one that's not in use. So I learned something on the fly there. If a rate card is in use, it will not allow you to delete it, which makes sense. So as I was going to say, as with everything in EP, we give you a big pop-up that says, hey, are you sure you want to delete this? It can't be undone. In this case, I am sure. I'm going to click delete. And then as we just learned on the fly, if you try and delete a rate card that is being used in a project, Easy Projects will not allow you to delete it because obviously it needs this information to calculate the billing figures. All right. And I'll ask everyone to forgive my voice today. I've got a little bit of a frog in my throat, so okay. All right, so that's rate cards in a nutshell. If you have any questions or you're interested in learning more, as we mentioned before, please reach out to success@easyprojects.net. Or, you know, if you're currently working with David or Patrick or Joe or somebody else on the team, feel free to reach out directly to them and say, hey, I'd like to learn more. Next up, we're going to take a quick look at the professional services reports that we're including with Easy Projects Professional Services Edition. So what we're doing here is we're including the embedded Power BI that is normally an add-on with Easy Projects as standard with the Professional Services Edition. And we're also including a set of about 20 reports that are divided up into a few categories as standard as part of the Professional Services Edition. Among those different types of reports, we've got a bunch of resource management reports that are new. We've got some resource loading reports that are new. And we've also got our standard canned project management reports that we've had for some time. They all come as standard with the Professional Services Edition. So let's take a peek at some of the those reports. So I'm going to flip over to the resource management reports. To get to these reports, because the new UI is so new, you'll notice that the business intelligence area is right in the new tray menu. So you can click on that and that'll take you to here. And then if you have different sets of reports, then there'll be a drop down here. So we all know that EP is really good when it comes to tracking your resources. You can build out project plans, make resource assignments, estimate hours, durations. All of that stuff is relatively easy. And so from a project management perspective, you can build out those projects and have all of that stuff set and allocated. But if you want to have a detailed understanding of how those project plans actually roll up to portfolios, geographies, how they impact your, how those resources are going to impact your business generally, then you're going to need to be able to have some sort of additional intelligence on top of that that'll allow you to identify areas of concern and potentially correct them. So a good example of that is from a BD perspective, based on our current demand projections and based on our current resource loading and resource management, do we have enough staff to handle the business that we expect to win in the next quarter? Do we need to scale up our business development efforts to generate more business to service the staff that we currently have? So let's take it I'm gonna kind of, I'm not gonna say jump through this, but I would suggest that if you're interested in seeing these guys, that you reach out to one of us for a complete demo, as the specifics of these reports will depend on exactly how you run your business. So let's take a few look at a few of these reports and see if they are a good fit for you. So the resource loading, the resource management section. So we've got a couple of themes here. So we've got a general demand projection theme where we're looking at what do we think the actual demand is going to be in a given time period. And by that, in Easy Projects parlance, we mean the estimated hours over a given period of time. We also have the ability to show the actual hours during that time. And then what is the 100% capacity of the organization? What's the 75% capacity? And how do our estimates and our actuals compare to the capacity of the organization during that time? So please note that this is a demo account, and it's not going to be exactly pristine, but basically the picture that this is showing me is that from a demand perspective, it's very low. It's nowhere near 75% of our capacity, never mind 100% of our capacity. And so we have some work to do to build up our BD efforts in order to bring in some new business. Otherwise, we're going to have some layoffs. The inverse use of this account would be that if your demands were exceeding your capacity, you know that you're going to have some issues delivering on time and delivering your projects probably to the satisfaction of your customers. And so you're going to have a hiring challenge in the near future. So really, just a really quick overview of the use of that. You'll note that we've got a couple of reports that show overloaded staff. So what are the estimates in a given time period? What are the actuals? What's their 4-month average forecast in the future? And what's their 4-month capacity? And so this will show who are the people that in the next 4 months we can say that are going to be overloaded, and we may need to provide them some assistance. Same sort of story when it comes to underloaded staff. Again, not the best picture when it comes to the sample data, but basically the idea here is, hey, where are those users that are underloaded, be it because we don't actually have work for them, or be it because they're just not doing their work at all. And so same sort of concept when it comes to projects. So let's look at a project and say, okay, the projections were a certain amount of hours in a given time period, and the actuals are much higher than those projections. And so there's a problem here, and we need to dig into what that problem is. Same sort of concept when it comes to exceeding. So the projects are exceeding the number of hours that we estimated for them. We have the same sort of view when it comes to users. So we can see the users who are exceeding their projections by a large amount. So again, it begs the question as to why that is the case. Next up, we're going to flip over to resource loading. So the built-in resource loading reports in Easy Projects are a pretty great way of staying on top of how busy your employees are, who potentially could be overloaded, but they are static in the way that they're built. So they do have the ability to drill down by a user, by a project and an activity. You can also filter by team and time period, but that's about it. And so it's very useful, but it's not very configurable. And so what if you wanted to perhaps group by a project rather than by a user? So in the native report, you'll see everything grouped by users, and then within that, you'll see what projects they're actually loaded on. What if you wanted to flip that around and see all the users grouped by a project? So what we've started to do is create variations of the same report with small tweaks based on the use case. So in this case, typically in Easy Projects, you would see Crystal Johnson all the way to the left, and then you would see all of our projects here. But what if I want to compare everybody or group everybody that is actually on project 39, as opposed to seeing the information broken down by the user? So very subtle change, but a very useful one when you want to be able to compare and understand what's going on a given project from a resource loading perspective. You can also basically choose, slice and dice. So what if you wanted to filter by a given custom field that is useful on your project for tracking some sort of data? and you only want to see projects that are in a certain category of that data. Not possible using the native resource loading report. It's trivial when it comes to building out a report that you could add that dimension of data here. Another example that we've built out and included is the same sort of idea of grouping by skill. You can see everybody with that skill, what their loading is over time. And if you had a need for, a C# developer, then, or perhaps say a C++ developer, in a given period of time, you can use this to compare all of your C++ developers in one spot. Same sort of idea when it comes to filtering. If you have, certain constraints, perhaps geography, perhaps skill level, that kind of stuff, it could be added here. And you can show all of that information in a handy dandy little report. So when it comes to this concept, I think it's quite powerful, and I think it's quite adaptable. And so if you want to look at resource loading in a different way, using different dimensions, please do reach out, and we can have a conversation about that. Finally, I'm going to just quickly show one last set of reports. So we've also included 2 more resource loading reports, and the so what on these guys is that they're formatted slightly differently, and there are 2 additional dimensions that this type of report adds over the previous one. One, you can actually get a sense of their loading via percentage as opposed to just an absolute number. So it's a little bit more intuitive to look at somebody's loading and say, so for team 16, and in this case, we're loading by team. For team 16 in a given, so in Feb 2020, we can see that their loading is at 80%, whereas team 20 is at 48. So it's not necessarily intuitive to look at a given number of hours and understand what that means in context. So that's kind of what the idea is here. I think it's super useful, and you can also see that the graph will show a total of percentage for all of your teams. Right now we're highlighting and selecting by team. I'm going to select all, and so you can see all of the various teams. The other dimension that I think is really cool here is that we've got some KPIs that we've generated down here that we've kind of borrowed from one of our customers in terms of the use case, where we're basically looking at the average loading for our organization in a given period of time. What is our target during that period of time? And what are the implications when it comes to either business development or resources, hiring, FTE, that kind of thing. And so you can use this for an at-a-glance view as to what sort of activities you should be ramping up for in a given period of time. Super, super powerful. And then you've also got, if you wanted to break this down, we've also got the ability to do so by user. And then finally, we've got our normal BI dashboards that we've added. These will probably be pretty familiar for most people who have seen any of our webinars. So it's got all of the normal dashboards that we would normally include when you subscribe to Power BI. I'm not going to go through all of them because we're kind of running out of time. But again, the idea here is please reach out, and we'd be happy to demo them for you in person and probably hit on the actual use cases that are of interest to you. The final point that I would make around the BI stuff is this stuff is highly customizable, guys. So most of these are just templates as to use cases that we thought would be useful, especially given the rate card customization. And so, the world is your oyster in terms of customizing this stuff and making changes to it to fit your use case. Alrighty, my voice is almost out of juice. All right, so the last part is additionally quite exciting. So coming soon from EP. So as Dave mentioned, there has been a bit of a desert in terms of a bit of a winter around that normal cadence of new functionality that you're probably used to at EP. that we're getting back into. So coming very soon in current development, we're going to have multi-select custom field lists. So you'll be able to select 2 values in a custom field list, which is very cool. We're also going to be adding the ability to use a custom field on a custom form. So you'll be able to reuse that custom field on your custom forms, and you won't have to recreate it every time you create a new custom form, which would be pretty cool. We're very excited to add the ability to @mention somebody, similar to most other like Slack or other platforms. That's coming soon. We're also going to be adding a list of who was notified on a given message. We're also looking at a TFS DevOps general integration. And then finally, the one that's probably the most interesting and most important is the idea of a custom inbox/notification center that'll be coming soon. So think of the approvals page that they've showed you, but for notifications. It's a one-stop shop for all your inbox notifications and that kind of stuff. So you can see that there's a lot coming. As this stuff is released, or as it becomes close to being released, we'll let you know when it's coming. We'll host a webinar to show you how to use it. And as always, if you have any questions or need to get in touch for any of the stuff that we've discussed today, please feel free to reach out to success@easyprojects.net. Don't be shy, and we'll be happy to chat with you and see if it's a good match. Finally, I just want to say thanks for everybody's time today. We went way over the time that I thought we would. I thought we might nail this one in half an hour, but I think there's a lot of good content here, and I think a lot of good value. So, c'est la vie, and appreciate everybody's time, and look forward to talking to you in the near future, and hopefully seeing you on our next webinar.